good to see some people still in our live audience, and of course everyone joining us remotely, sat at home, or possibly tucked up in bed right now, depending on what part of the world you're in, or if you're in the US, then you're just getting around to your morning coffee. So thank you for joining us. Next up, we have Brian White, who is the former, and that is a key word in this conversation, the former SVP of Supply Chain Management and Managing Director at Swarovski. So I'm familiar with Swarovski. I'm sure a lot of other people are watching this today. Why is that a supply chain story? So why are you here today to talk about that?
Yeah, I think just to set the context of Swarovski, so it's about 2 billion euro revenue business, but that's made up of 28 million on average pieces of jewelry or watches of glasses per year. And actually we sell in over 100 countries around the world, in our own stores, in e-com, in partner stores. So extremely varied number of places you can buy, all coming back into the supply chain organization, where we need to organize all the manufacturing of the finished goods and the manufacturing of all the crystal and sourcing of the gems as well. So a pretty complicated end-to-end story, and hopefully we'll share some good innovation stories along the way now.
Oh, well, you've teased that. You've set me up now to talk about those. Well, let's just talk about your career as well, because you have got more than 30 years of experience in supply chain and operations, in line management and consulting roles as well. So tell us a bit more about your background, and then let's talk about some of these innovations as well.
Yeah, sure. So I've spent the last 4.5 years working with Swarovski, and started off as the head of supply chain strategy. And we had a major reorganization when COVID struck, actually. It was almost like a good opportunity, don't waste a crisis. And at that point, I became the head of supply chain for the end-to-end of the business. Prior to that, if we go back to the beginning, I started out life making sugar. So I worked for Tate & Lyle and spent a lot of time in the factories there in the UK, but also in Africa. And then a long period in consulting, working with retail, consumer, and industrial product companies.
Okay, so let's talk about some of those innovations then. So give us some clear examples of initiatives that you implemented that helped you to enhance the efficiency and sustainability as well.
When I'd pick on 3 examples at differing levels of detail, the major thing that we did at Swarovski over the last 3 years or so is restructured our global logistics network. So everybody goes through that, but what we tried to do was make it a whole journey, a whole change that we made in the organization. Historically, we'd been very centrally run. We'd had a large warehouse in Liechtenstein, which is in the center of Europe, next to Switzerland, but it's not great for e-com. You know, it was built for store fulfillment, but now everybody wants to buy online, or at least have an omni-channel switch across channels experience. So we couldn't meet the customer demand. So we restructured the logistics by pushing things out into the different regions with which we operated, into the US, into the EU, in Singapore for Asia, and China for China. And that was really important to make sure that we, one, were far closer to the customers, but also to make sure we took advantage of indirect tax opportunities that we had. So any supply chain person, I really encourage you to go and be friends with your indirect tax colleagues if you're not already. The free trade agreements, the foreign trade zones you can set up are really powerful ways of minimizing the duties, legitimately minimizing the duties that you pay. So we did the network, we did the tax model, but we also changed our organization. So we moved people from the center into the region, so we were closer to the action. We did have faster decision making, and we weren't waiting for another 24 hours for a decision in the US to make something happen, but really about spreading out and empowering the local teams. So that's one sort of big change that we made. Another innovation was with how we ran S&OP. So I think most organizations have an S&OP, a sales and operations planning process. And ours has become quite an efficient financial construct, monthly, quarterly, year end, we knew what was going to happen. But hopefully you've noticed, you said you knew Swarovski. I mean, we've been through a massive brand change and brand transformation, to a bigger, bolder, more colourful jewellery to really change our image in the marketplace. And that meant we need to be far better at integrating our new product launches in our S&OP process. So we might have, for spring, summer, 30% newness. For fall, winter, another 30% newness in the portfolio. So we changed our S&OP discussion to be about how ready are we for spring, summer? Is the manufacturing geared up? Is the pipe filled? Are the stores ready to go? And drill that down. Are we ready for Valentine's Day? If you miss Valentine's Day, that's it. That product is wasted. It's going to go into an outlet or potentially get scrapped. So it really needs to be joined up tightly, the supply chain with the marketing and with the sales. So using S&OP to really be more commercial, rather than sort of a finance or a supply chain activity. And the last thing I'll touch on is sort of a people softer thing. We had a number of discussions, particularly through COVID and afterwards, where we were always talking about what's not working and what we're trying to overcome, our alerts, our management by exceptions. And I think we've trained ourselves as supply chain people, to solve all those little problems. But it weighs you down. You start becoming glass half empty in the way that you view the world. So we made a conscious effort within the team to be glass half full. What has gone well? What have we prevented? What are we actually doing faster? And making sure we're communicating that as well as the risks that we see that are coming down the line.
Okay, great. Lots of detail there about the initiatives and the plans you put in place. How much did technology and data analytics help to optimize the processes that you've talked about? How much did you have to leverage those?
Yeah. So we had the benefit, the pleasure or the pain actually, of being really vertically integrated. So actually there's a sea of data out there, from the stores, from the tills, from the web shop. That's about 70% of the sales are internal. And we had good relationships, good data feeds from partners. A lot of the manufacturing is internal as well, so we had lots of good access to data there, and we had some long-standing partners. So actually, it was more about where do we start and how do we use it. So we really focused on making sure we knew what the exam question was that we needed to answer. What was the purpose we were applying? Availability. Forward projection of when the stores or when the web shop stocks were going to would be available was a major thing that we invested in. So we'd shape our reports and draw out our data to specifically answer availability was one question. Another was allocations. So with a lot of the brand change, we started making some bolder, bigger, more expensive, more valuable pieces of jewelry, and we made fixed quantities. And in the center, the commercial people decided who would get them, and the orders came in, and we fulfilled them. So we really need to make sure that the order allocation engine, that the data in there was geared up to satisfying the commercial priorities and prioritizing the products, the markets, but also the channel that we were selling the products down.
And how important are your suppliers and your key partners when it comes to driving this innovation?
Yeah, they have a big part to play. I think, as I was saying, a lot of the suppliers were actually internal. And as part of the change at the start of COVID in March 2020, April 2020, was actually integrating the business that really changed the game for us. Because we had a business unit model of retail, consumer, crystal, the actual sparkle in the jewellery, and gemstones. But we turned that through 90 degrees, so we looked end to end across the business. That actually took away noise and a lot of the intercompany trading. So that was a big thing to remove. But also with the manufacturers, a lot of the work we did went into making sure everybody knew their purpose and their place in the overall network. So some factories were very much around the volume. We sort of segmented, what were our regular runners in terms of products, and made those factories proud of delivering consistently the more higher volume. And then we had factories, a lot of them external, where we would pilot and test new techniques in manufacturing, and we would reward them for their innovation rather than their volume or their cost competitiveness. So really making sure we gave everybody a clear purpose and rewarded and measured them based on that.
Now, one thing we often hear about, well, most people when they hear about precious gems, for instance, and supply chain, or they might immediately think about ethical sourcing and sustainability. I think that's fair to say. So how does the company, or how did the company ensure transparency and traceability through the supply chain when it came to sourcing those precious stones?
Yeah, so within that, the majority of the product actually is crystal, which is glass. That's a specifically high grade of sand that we used. Where traceability really matters is in the new category of created diamonds. So it is a diamond. It's cheaper to manufacture. It's far more sustainable to manufacture than it is to go and dig a massive hole in Botswana and pull the diamond out of the ground in that way. And it's a valuable piece. And so the largest stones are laser engraved, and they actually come with a certificate as well. So we didn't manage individual items in the past, but there was a need because of as you say, because of the value, and because of the sort of the heritage around it. People want to know that it's real, the certification, that we had to develop a solution where we could track and monitor the individual stones that we're selling.
Okay, and we talked about the obvious challenge that was the pandemic, but also the opportunities that naturally created as well. What are some of the other key challenges that you've encountered while implementing some of the innovations that you've spoken about, and how did you actually overcome those challenges?
Yeah, so I think a big one would be just capturing the e-com opportunity. So if I think sort of back to 2019 of the business, about 9% of the sales were actually online. Yet now it's about 30%, which is a really big change. And if you sort of think from a supply chain perspective, to supply to a store, it's a weekly cycle. It was quite a rhythm. You'd put 50 or 60 items in a big box, and they'd get sent off. But e-com orders are coming in 24/7, and we're getting our logistics partners to dispatch them from 4 centers around the world on a 24/7 cycle. So that was a real change, and because we had the logistics network set up, that then allows us to go and do other additions. So department stores now want us to deliver their e-com customer parcel, particularly in the US. So because we'd separated things out into the regions, we could tailor solutions just for the US market. So if you were buying in Saks, Fifth Avenue, or Nordman, that you're buying from them, but it comes straight through to our fulfillment center, which gives us and them more scale, and then we dispatch it from there. So really, it was more innovative because we'd actually set up a large distributed network.
And are there any challenges when it comes to supply chain that you would say are unique for the jewellery industry?
Good question. But, give me a second.
I'll give you a second.
To think about that.
While you're thinking about that, I'll ask you another one.
Nice, double up.
I'm stacking. In your experience, what strategies have proven effective in... I'm trying to think how to word this, actually.
Well, you think about that one, and I'll answer the first,
That's a good
I'll answer the
idea.
first question.
You do that. It's been a long day. You answer that one, and I'll come to this second one.
Yeah. So someone can challenge me as to whether they've seen it somewhere else, but there is a precious metal is one thing that's really important. So, making sure that in the factories that we're looking after the silver or the gold or the platinum that's used in the plating of the jewelry is very important. It's expensive. It's attractive to people as well. So you really need to make sure that we're looking after that. And I think the other challenge in predicting demands is it's a luxury item. It's a conscious choice someone is making to treat a loved one or to treat themselves. So tuning into economic cycles are really important about getting your products, your promotions, or your price points right. In a cost of living crisis or an inflationary world, we want to make sure we've got products that are very attractive and sort of cost conscious, as well as things which are a real treat for yourself or for a loved one.
Now, would you say, slightly different question than the one I was going to ask, would you say that the supply chain processes or the supply chain in general improved during the pandemic at Swarovski because of the changes that you had to implement? Yeah. Have you emerged the other side with a stronger, more efficient supply chain?
So, yes, we did more faster because we had to. Yeah, there was less debate and discussion. It was more about getting on and executing. Our sort of turning our information into availability, very quickly was really important. Because it's the commercial people needed to know what was coming and when, and that was key to their decision making about how they activated in store. So we didn't sort of faff around discussing, how should the data model be set up, how should we set up the team. It was more straight into the action there, and also sort of ramping up and down factories was far more directive because we had to.
And I suppose that's the kind of because that became a new normal in terms of how to manage that supply chain. Some best practices were learnt during that period that have endured and continue to be implemented.
Yeah, exactly. And that, if I go back to the S&OP example, focusing very much on when we hit the market and being really commercial about it in our planning processes was really, really important for us. And that's endured, really looking through the lens of the customer, when they want to buy, how the shop prepares to sell to them, and how we get the goods in there in good time. So we don't miss Valentine's Day. That's not good for business.
It's not good for anyone, just to be clear. Okay.
That's your life learning.
Exactly, yeah. Do not miss Valentine's Day, kids. Take it from me. That's all the questions I have. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you. Thanks.